This time on ChinnyVision, it's an all-time arcade shoot-'em-up classic. Known to everybody in the UK as Nemesis, but known everywhere else as Gradius, this was an arcade classic. Most people would have heard about it perhaps in the arcades, but also the superlative version on the PC Engine, although we're not looking at that version today. But instead we're going to look at the 8-bit home conversions, and of course in the UK and Europe and possibly America as well. The game was originally known as Nemesis, so from now on I'm just going to be talking about Nemesis. And Imagine had the licenses when they were part of Ocean, so we're going to start off with the first version I played, which is the Amstrad CPC. Does this game need any kind of introduction? Well, I'll explain a bit about it as we go along. We start with a familiar theme tune, and you can play one player or two player. It's not cooperative play, it's one player after the other, so that's as much two player as you get. You shoot the baddies. If you get all the baddies in each wave, they drop a power up, and then you can select which power up you want. So it's not like the baddies drop a power up, for example missiles. No, you have to collect two power ups and then you can select missiles. So I've got missiles there, and I've got a speed up as well, I think. And this is on the Amstrad CPC. It's quite colourful, moves around quite well. The music gets on your nerves quickly. Yes, it is the original tune, but it seems to loop over far quicker. The graphics on the CPC version here are extremely crude and some poor colour choices. So we should any second be going inside, or usually there's... here we go. You go inside this kind of area and everything seems in the right place, but this plays pretty badly and it slows down horrifically the more there is on screen. It is quite difficult to get relatively far in the game because the playfield is reduced over the arcade, and you can see the speed up there in the star field in the background. So when the stars slow right down the more there is going on the screen, and then it really whizzes along when there's nothing on the screen. It's really distracting, and it all just looks a little bit ugly in some weird colour choices. It's quite difficult to get far in this version of the game, partly because it's quite repetitive. Although the original game is slightly repetitive in itself, the CPC version seems to suffer from it far more. And there's also things missing. We've gone to the volcano stage of level 1 here, volcano part of level 1, and there's not been the mountain that you can fly under, and that great big thing that fires missiles at you on the rocks before you get to the mountains. So yeah, it's a game on the Amstrad that really needs a few more weeks coding really, and just, I mean, this pink background, pink and red, looks like a BBC Micro game, and the flickering as the missile hits the volcanoes there, it just, as it actually goes in, it's all a bit weird. It's the end of level baddie. It's a little bit slow again. It's easy to avoid the missiles on the CPC because the baddie moves so slowly. And of course it is this baddie on the end of each level. You get a baddie before the main end of level baddie. And then on to level 2. And I've just forwarded on a bit, coming towards the end of level 2. And now I am playing with a cheat, by the way, because I couldn't quite get this far without cheating, so I've got collision detection off. So if you see it, and there speeds up again, it massively speeds up. I think it's level 4 now. And yeah, they've got the levels here from the arcade, all these skull things that come out of the scenery, but it's not much fun here on the Amstrad, I'm afraid. It's all a bit crude, and this speeding up and slowing down, it's just not very good. Over to the Commodore 64. And off we go. Oh, it's quite fast. Couldn't clear that first wave there. No. Oh, weird spinning death animation when you die. That's not in the arcade version as I can remember. I could be wrong there. But I don't seem to recall it from when I played it earlier. just... It looks like Nemesis. It plays like Nemesis. I'm feeling I don't usually like to use auto-fire in these games because it's almost like a form of cheating. But I think you may need to play this with auto-fire on. I'll try that a bit later on. The music's quite good here on this version, but this speed issue there... Oh, it crashed again. And one thing I've noticed, it may be a bug with the image I'm playing with, I don't know. Sometimes when you die, the music doesn't come back. And you have to press M to make it come back again, because you can have sound effects, music or silence. Little bit irritating, but that could be the image I'm playing with. Oh dear. With the reduced playfield over the arcade version, having these large enemy missiles coming at you makes it slightly difficult to avoid them. And it's taken me a significant amount of time to get this far, and in fact I'm now cheating, because anyone who knows me on Twitter knows I've spent about 35-40 minutes trying to get to the end of level 1. And what I think the problem is, because other people have said they don't have this problem, could be the capture delay. It is a quick reaction game, and things do, there you go, it does move so fast, and you can see I've got collision detection off. And I just couldn't, for the life of me, get to this final part of level 1. It'd always be something that just hit me, and I didn't notice it, and it's about a quarter of a second. I know I'm always whinging about this, but it does make a difference on quick reaction games. That said, I did play it without the capture plugged in and still found it a little bit more difficult. I think probably if you've been playing the C64 version since the 80s, you'll probably find it significantly easier than me, who's just come to it this week, literally, for the first time. All the levels from the arcade are here. This is level 4, as we saw in the CPC version. Graphics on the C64 version here are far better than the Amstrad version. Good representation of what the arcade version does, and a quick reminder there, I did skim the scenery because I do have the collision detection turned off, so that we can get to the later levels. This is on to one of the final levels. Again, good copy of the arcade. Works really well. You can't complain too much about this, other than, I think it might be a little bit more difficult because of the reduced playfield here on the C64. If you lose your power-ups, it still becomes a significantly more difficult game, whereas with the arcade version as well, it does, and this is the end of game baddie, it does seem to temper the difficulty of the game depending on how many power-ups you've got. Overall on the C64, yeah, other people like it. Other C64 people actually said no, Salamander is far better on the C64, don't play Nemesis. I think the game looks the part, it sounds the part, don't think it quite plays the part. Over on the Specky, it's a 48k game, so no 128k sound effects. Horrible rendition of the game theme here on the title screen, slightly irritating and beepy and horrible. And off we go. And actually it's very similar to the Amstrad version, isn't it? Doesn't appear to have the slowdown problem. Oh, does it though? It does seem to slow down. Yeah, it does actually. It's not as apparent because the graphics are more basic. But yes, it is slowing down the more there is on screen. You watch that starfield in the background, it speeds up and then slows down when the other enemy sprites come on the screen. Essentially here on the Spectrum, it's a monochromatic version of the Amstrad version, so at least it doesn't have those ugly visuals, but overall it's, again, like the Amstrad version, a few more weeks programming and they might be able to refine this into something a bit better. It's certainly nowhere near as good as R-Type, is on the Spectrum, and that, for a Speccy owner, is the place to aim for, really, if you're looking for a good shoot-'em-up. Here's a first for ChinnyVision. We are going to look at a Game Boy version. I've held off doing Game Boy reviews because it's very difficult to show Game Boy using the real hardware on capture, because I'd need to use a video camera and I have to point it at the screen. It would be very difficult. But it was pointed out to me that the Super Game Boy that you plug into the SNES is actually a real Game Boy in a cart. So I'm running this on a Super Game Boy, as you can see from the bottom of the screen there. And yeah, it doesn't emulate the screen properly, but it should run at the same speed and look and sound authentic. And off we go. And yeah, it's a really nice conversion of Nemesis. Restricted screen size again, although it doesn't seem to matter as much as it does in those other versions that we saw. No slowdown. Really nice rendition of the music. Lots of actually difficulty levels you can play on as well. Looks really nice. Okay, on a Game Boy screen. I have been playing it on a real Game Boy screen as well. The graphics don't look as nice as here because the Super Game Boy uses different palettes to the black on that strange grey-green screen that the Game Boy does. And of course you don't have the blurring and the other issues. But no, this is a really nice conversion of Nemesis for the Game Boy. I think it's I've been playing this a fair amount. And it's a game that you should definitely own if you've got a Game Boy. I think it's probably better than the version of R-Type that I have for the Game Boy as well. It's really nice. Now, there was one version of Nemesis that was the Holy Grail for the 8-bits in the late 80s, and it was the MSX version. It was often talked about, never seen. You occasionally saw screenshots of it in magazines. I only got to play it fairly recently when I got a cartridge, and the Konami logo appears because it is a Konami game, so they've done the conversion themselves. And look at this wonderful graphics on the title screen here with the proper Nemesis logo, and a nice depiction of the space battle here with the correct music. It looks and sounds absolutely lovely. So how does it play? Off we go. Oh, look at this. Wow, this is a step above the other 8-bit versions, it has to be said, with the possible exception of the Game Boy. They've got all the colour here. It's absolutely lovely. The spaceship, it's using the MSX's hardware sprites. The spaceship moves around really smoothly, as do the enemies. Presumably they're using some kind of sprite multiplexing here, I don't know. The backgrounds do jerk along a few pixels at a time because the MSX has no hardware scrolling. That can be slightly disconcerting when you see these silky smooth sprites going past against the jerking background. But it's really nice. I mean, considering the palette limitations the MSX has, just look at this. It's almost like a Super Spectrum version almost. Of course, the MSX and Spectrum palettes are very similar, but when the MSX, and of course the MSX also has colour clash, but when the MSX uses its hardware sprites, there's no colour clash at all. And all these graphics you're seeing on the screen, all the enemy sprites and your sprite, are hardware sprites. Those power-ups aren't hardware sprites, this is why they're jerking along. This is quite marvellous. The music's really nice as well, a nice AY rendition of the Nemesis music. I can see why people were impressed with this. Today, okay, you compare it against the PC Engine version, which is the definitive version, which is perhaps even better than the arcade version because it's Konami actually improved the game and put more bells and whistles on there. But no, this is really nice. This is, for me, the must-own game for any MSX owner. And of course, there's Nemesis 2 and other versions of the games for the other MSX systems, including the MSX2. And the following versions are even more polished than this. And look at this big enemy sprite at the end. Again, look at all the colours on it and the detail. And yes, okay, it's moving along jerkily, but you know, this is an 8-bit system, and this is, because this has been done by Konami, they've done a really good job on it. And that's so true of so many of their conversions to their games. If Konami were converting their games to the MSX, they always did a really good job. It's a shame they didn't actually do games for the Western systems themselves, instead licensing it out to people like Ocean/Imagine, who just did a job in a few weeks. Compared to look at this. It's so nice, and you could have, the graphics on the C64 are nice, but it doesn't play like this. Plays like the arcade version. They've not just made sure it looks as good as it can on the limited MSX hardware, they've made sure it plays authentically. And I've not got the two running but side by side, so I don't know if all the enemy placements are exactly correct, but it feels from memory correct, and I guess that's all you need when you buy a arcade game for your home system. You want to be able to play have the arcade experience at home. So I'm wondering if those sprites on the screen at the moment, I don't think some of those sprites going past at the moment are hardware sprites, but those things flying towards me are. So they've obviously trying to, because the MSX can only handle so many sprites on screen at once, they're obviously trying to be efficient with what they're doing. I could be wrong, it could just be the way those things are moving. And I haven't talked about the power-up system. Well, I've talked a little bit about the power-up system in Nemesis. You've got the speed-up option, which you really do need. Missile's useful because it launches things downwards. Then you've got the double shooting, which is useful because it shoots a bullet up and down. Laser, which obliterates all in front of you. Option, which gives you a little extra sphere that flies around that also shoots the same things you do. And finally, the question mark at the end, which is a shield. So, Nemesis on the 8-bits. Well, the Amstrad Spectrum and Commodore versions are all pretty lame, I'm afraid. The Amstrad version looks awful, plays awful, it's just horrid. The Spectrum version, just because the Spectrum doesn't have as many colours as the Amstrad, they couldn't mess it up as much. But unfortunately, still, when you come to play it, it still slows down, it's still pretty dreadful. The C64 version, they've done a nice job on the graphics and the presentation, but I'm afraid it doesn't play right. So, C64 might have its fans, but I'm not one of them. The Game Boy version is a highlight of the system, I think. It's a really good game, really good port, really enjoyed it. Nice graphics. Okay, it won't look as nice as we've seen it there on the Game Boy screen, but trust me, I've been playing it and it's really good, despite the limited playfield. MSX, it's everything I was always told it was. It's as good a port of Gradius/Nemesis as you could possibly get on an 8-bit system. Konami have pushed the system to make the graphics and the sound as authentic as possible with unlimited hardware, but the key thing, and this is what the C64 version lacks, is they've made sure the gameplay feels spot on. Even if it might not be identical to the arcade, the point is you could buy this cartridge and you'll think, actually, this is playing like the arcade. I'm sure if you put them side by side, there's going to be differences, but it feels absolutely spot on. And if you've got an MSX, this is a definite must-own cartridge for your system.